This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we look at The Sandlot as a way to build friendships and find joy. We've got to break out of our comfortable rut, and it's through new experiences that relationships are strengthened. And to make memories and find joy, you've got to engage the senses. But if you can do that, you'll find that every day is an adventure. You're killing me, Smalls. Now let's discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me live for the first time on the Facebook is Britt Mooney. Hey man, how you doing?
Doing well, man. How you doing?
Good. We are excited to be expanding our repertoire, expanding our skills, figuring out things. We've been talking for like 40 minutes already on Facebook Live. Right? Having a big conversation with the two of us and Sarah, going back and forth about movies and Stryper and Flash Gordon and all the stuff that you're going to hear about here in the next 45 minutes or so. I'm coming. Yeah, we're going short today.
Go for it. Let's do it.
That's doubtful. So we're excited. We've got, some stuff going on, but, we're going to be doing some more Facebook Live recordings. We're going to be having like some of our patrons will come in and they'll join us as like audience members in our virtual studio that we've got. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on these days. So it's not even the movies that we've got coming up. We'll be talking about Parenthood and E.T. and hopefully Avatar and Aliens and Independence Day. We got Zombieland and Last Starfighter, Defiance. I think The Kid, I got to just schedule that with somebody to talk about The Kid. So we've got a lot of awesome stuff going on. We've got a new logo coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be sweet. We're going to be styling and profiling as no one says.
There you go.
So we recorded last week. We talked about me and Aaron. We talked about Field of Dreams. And so this feels like a very summer kickoff, starting with Field of Dreams. And now we're going to talk about The Sandlot. So Britt, you are hounding me to do this movie.
Hounding you?
Hounding. I was like, hey, what about this? You're like, dude, I need to do The Sandlot. We've got to get The Sandlot out of our system. So Britt, why did you pick this movie? What do you love about this movie? And I guess basically, we'll talk about what we're going to be talking about.
Well, to me, The Sandlot is one of those foundational guy movies that I know of. I mean, most of the men my age, when you bring up The Sandlot, you get this, I love that movie. Like, it's one of those movies that kind of harkens to that little kid nostalgia, learning to play baseball, hanging out with your friends, doing goofy stuff with your friends that no one ever knew about, that your mom never knew about. And it's kind of a lost experience, as we were talking about before. But I just know a lot of guys my age and a little younger who have seen the movie, but even my kids love this movie.
Right. Like
my kids love this movie. It has that universal kid element to it. And it's just one of those, like I said, it's those Men at the Movies. And it's one of those that when I think about The Sandlot, I think I don't know a guy who doesn't love this movie for a lot of the reasons that I think we'll talk about. And I love the movie because I think that it's got some really great themes about friendship and just how that friendship and some of the relationships that happened in the movie really formed who Scotty was in a time that he really needed it. And I think we can all kind of remember going into summer. My kids do this. My kids are finishing up school right now. Today is their last day, and they are sad because it's like they're going to miss their friends, and it's like, how am I going to see my friends? And I'm not going to see them every day. And, you know what I mean? Like, what are we going to do all summer? And so all of those sort of universal themes is why I love it, and I think it's going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. My son, I picked him up from college a couple of weeks ago, and I got there midday. We went and played golf, and then I went out with a couple of his friends, took him out to dinner, and watching him. And these are a couple of his best friends there, his roommate and another guy that he's, I think, going to be rooming with next year. And they're sort of talking to each other, but it was interesting because I saw, like, one of them said something that, like, Brendan, when he said goodbye to one of his other friends, I guess got choked up and emotional. And he's talking with his roommate. He's like, it's going to be so weird. How are we going to deal with life without, like, waking up and seeing you across the room kind of mentality? You know, and I was like, yeah, you guys are living like the end of the Harry Potter movies where you leave going home for the summer. And there is that sadness. I mean, they're happy to have school over, but sort of to say goodbye. And I think that sort of lends itself. That's what nostalgia is, right? A little bit of, it's that bittersweet. There's the joy with a little pain to it. And I think when we look back at our childhood, we have these Sandlot type moments, and a part of us wishes we could go back there. maybe most that part could be like 80% wishes we could go back. And I remember my college days playing poker late in the night, playing Nintendo. Mario Kart was the big thing for us. And there's this longing to go back there, but then knowing that it's gone. And I think wrestling with that, I think, is what we're going to be talking a little bit about this today. It's interesting when you were praying, you were talking about the nostalgia and looking back in the Gospels at Christ and looking back in the Bible at, that stuff. But then we can't just constantly look back at who Jesus was. We've got to look forward to his return. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today, is not just looking back at our childhood, at our past, at those things, those memories. But then, like, I love that story that you shared, how on your wedding day, you're like, it was awesome, but that's not going to be the best day ever of your marriage. Like, you want the future to be better.
Right.
And so that creates a little bit of tension.
Well, it does, but what it helps us to realize is that, it helps me to realize is how to have the right attitude moving forward. People, it's the same way with my kids. People, we never called it terrible twos. We never called it that.
Right.
And we enjoyed two, just like we enjoyed one, and we enjoyed three, and doing our best to enjoy 16, 14, and 12. But, it's one of those realities where I have to go into some of these things thinking, when they were 2 and 4 and 6, they were so cute, and I love it. And on the Amazon Fire TV stick, it brings up Becca's pictures that she's got in the cloud, and I love it. I love thinking back when my kids, every year when my kids come to their birthday, on their birthday, I tell them the story of when they were born and what a blessing they were when they arrived. I always want them to know you were and you are a blessing. And so there's nothing wrong with looking back, but at the same time, you have to ask questions. There's always something new. I've never done 16, 14, and 12 before. So I've got to learn. And Because I think a lot of times we want to settle. Our brains are basically lazy. And so what we want to do is do the same thing every day or whatever. We want to kind of get in these ruts,
right.
But the ruts kill us. The ruts kill marriages. The ruts kill parenting. The ruts. And so even though our brains want to get in the rut because we're corrupted and there's sin and all that you want to talk about, that's why the Father keeps saying, no, don't settle. Don't settle, man. There's so much more that you can experience. And even if you're 75, there's no retirement in the kingdom, man. Like, and I love the stories. And I know people who, when they retired, it's like they started something new and they feel like they have like their life has started over again. Just those sort of things are inspiring to me because I want to keep looking forward as hard as it can be sometimes and challenge myself with whatever's coming next,
Well, and it's interesting you talk about that our brain's desire for routine, our brain's desire sort of to be lazy. Again, that idea of formula, because even having your kids every 2 years apart, like you're not going to be able to engage with Micah the same way you engage with Elisha or the same way you engage with Hosanna. It's like, even if, you've got 2 girls, but even each girl is going to require different nuance, different talent.
That's right.
And that's what we talked a lot about that with in Field of Dreams, talking about walking with God and hearing the voice but that idea of it's not formula. We want formula, right? We want, if I do this, then this way. If I build it, he will come. Right? We want formula, but what God invites us to is relationship. And, but because with formula, there's no surprises. Which on a day like today, most people are like, I'd like a day without surprises. But then when you look at it, and this is where we're going with some of this, like, for instance, I took my grandson to the park the other day and he's 2.5. And he was under this thing, they're playing, and all of a sudden it's like this little like shelf where they're giving out mulch and pretending it's food. And then they just got to this level of excitement where they just start screaming and running around in a circle. And, there's like 2 kids under there, but they hear the screaming, see kids running around in circles. It's like a magnet. And all of a sudden there's like 6 kids all there running around and just laughing and screaming and doing that. And we were watching this comedy special with Adam Devine, and he was talking about sort of that concept where it's like, when you were a kid and you would get something like the gift that you wanted, or something would happen and your brain would like melt and you would freak out and be like, ah! He's like, if you do that as an adult, you're kind of a psycho, which I think is sad that that's like that. And I know and Britt, you're going to tell me about how you freaked out about some stuff.
Oh, I'm a psycho, obviously.
But when I look back and I look at this movie, I think I was reminded of how we're called to be. Unless you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom. Like, we have to have a childlike faith. And that idea, like, I want to freak out about stuff. Like, I want to have that joy.
You're so right. It's about relationship. And here's why God does what he does. Okay. He gives us new things because, do you know what brings people closer together is when they experience and make new memories together. That actually brings people into deeper relationship. And so God wants to give us those things as married people, as friends, as families, as a church, right? It happens with churches too. That's one of the reasons why I'm like, we're going to have to change some stuff up, because I'm continually trying to bring new stuff for us to experience together. as the family of God, because what I want to do is participate in that. There's so much to experience. And if we experience it together, and a lot of that is in service, guys, some of it's in worship. It's generally not in preaching, right? Very few people are like, man, remember when we were at that sermon together? Like, no, it's like, remember when we were serving the hungry together? It brings people closer. And that's why this movie is so powerful, is because that's what we long for. We long for those deep, intimate connections and relationships. And how we get that is by going out and experiencing new things together, making new memories.
Hang on. So what you were just saying, Britt, reminded me of, it really teed up the first clip where you've got Smalls, Scotty Smalls. He's a kid. He's got a stepdad that he keeps forgetting to call dad, or he's like, he flips back and forth between Bill and dad all movie long. And he just moved to a new place like 2 weeks before school ends. What a horrible time to move 2 weeks before the end of school. And his mom comes into his room because he's shown to be a dorky, socially uncomfortable kid. Maybe that's where Britt and I may sort of relate. So she comes in and she talks to Scotty and says, I don't want you to be inside playing with your erector set all summer long. You need to get out.
Scotty, have you made any friends yet?
No.
Why not, honey?
Because I'm still new.
I don't want you sitting around in here all summer fiddling with this stuff like you did last summer and the one before. I know you're smart and I'm proud of you. I want you to get out into the fresh air and make some friends. Run around, scrape your knees, get dirty. Climb trees, hop fences, get into trouble, for crying out loud. Not too much, but some. You have my permission. How many mothers do you know who say something like that to their sons?
Well, none mothers, I guess.
Honey, I want you to make some friends this summer. Lots of them.
Yeah, I know. But I'm not good at anything, Mom. Faced, I'm just an egghead.
Oh, honey. You'll always be just an egghead with an attitude like that.
Which I love that little closing line, because that's what I tell my kids. They're like, oh, I'll never do that. I was like, not with that attitude.
Right. There's one way you can be sure that that'll be true.
Yeah. But I wanted to dive into this concept of, that how do we get those friends now? We don't have summers off. Most the people listening, we have jobs, we have family commitments. We've got this, but my brain grabbed onto what you said, Britt, about we experience new things. We make new memories. And what I had written down was how do we get those friends that we engage in adventure and play? And that's what, right. Like, this movie is a roadmap for how to do that. And yes, it's obvious. These stories are sort of extreme because it takes that extreme to get our attention. And you're like, well, and you could be like Scotty and be like, well, I can't go to the Sandlot every day in the summer, so I guess I'll never have friends. Well, yeah, if you have that attitude, guess what? That's how it's going to work. But if you engage and you make new memories, and there's this whole, list of things that they do together, that they're young, they're creating new memories, they're learning new things, they're doing stuff. And I think for us, we so often get stuck in the routine of the monotonous. And because we're like Scotty, man, we were like, I don't know how to get out. I'm new. I'm uncomfortable. I'm awkward. And we don't like those feelings. So instead of pushing towards the more, we just sort of settle for the less. I'll just sit here in my buttoned up shirt and my giant billed trout hat and my plastic glove instead of risking things.
Well, it's the lie is that it's a risk. Like, it's actually a greater risk to not risk, right? It's actually worse. But that's the lie of safety in a certain sense. Like, safety's a ruse. Safety's elusive. Like, and the Bible is very clear about this. You can say what you want, but you don't even know what you're doing tomorrow, man. Like, you don't know. You can say tomorrow you're going to go somewhere, but like, you have to. There is this amazing dichotomy and it happens at once. It is in the scripture where we are supposed to live in the moment, thinking about eternity. Like we're supposed to do both. Like, if you're thinking about eternity, you're actually in the moment, more in the moment than if you were, because so often we think we're in the moment, but what we're really doing is we're just got blinders on, and we don't see people, we don't see what's really going on, and we don't get to experience what we need to. And man, I just it's been something that I've had to be intentional about in my life, and then especially marriage and kids and we even had a conversation last night because I know it's the end of school, and we had our family dinner, and I said, hey guys, here's a couple things I would like to do. Would you guys like to do it with me? Let's go to Six Flags, ride some roller coasters. You want to do that? We would love that. Yeah. And I'm not going to assume they want to do it because they're teenagers. Like when they're kids, you're like, we're going here, right? But now
yes, I'd love to, but not with you, Dad.
But teenagers, it's like, well, what are some other things that we could do that you guys would like to do? We're going to be around for the summer a little bit more because we're not quite as busy in June. So what I'm saying is trying to make sure we have those moments, and it doesn't have to be something you spend money on. It could be just stuff that you just go do, but go to a park and learn how to do something, or there's all sorts of creative ways. But it's what usually happens is that we regret, it's been a couple of weeks and we're like, oh man, I could have done all this stuff. And it's a different type of discipline. Being creative is a different type of discipline. You just like running or exercising or whatever, being creative is you have to constantly challenge yourself to come up with different ways of connecting with your kids, with your wife. And then that way you don't have those like, well, we just grew apart, you didn't just grow apart. What you did was you didn't make this a priority, make this a discipline. And I'm just telling you, man, we have things in our past that, I have memories with my kids and my wife and friends that will always be there. But I'm not settled in that. I'm thankful for going to Germany and Italy with my wife before we had kids and walking the city of Munich. Right. And that's amazing. Walking around Florence and seeing all of Italy and just making that a priority to do stuff like that. But that's not all we're going to do. Like, Like, we're going to go to Rome Makers together, right, Sarah? We're going to, we're going to do other stuff where it's like, let's go do this. Let's do it together. And so just having, and as friends, then, that's kind of, I have friends, dude. I don't know if you have friends like this, but I have friends that I'm still friends with from high school. And when we get together, they tell the same stories about what happened in high school. They tell the same stories. I don't tell those stories. That was great. High school was a blast in its own way. It sucked at times too.
Yeah.
Because I was 6'4" and 4 pounds and triple all over myself. And it wasn't all roses. I got my heart broken, and there's all sorts of stuff. But But man, last week was fun too. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on now? What's your life like now? Like, what are the adventures that you're having now? And it kind of makes me sad sometimes to talk to people, that whole glory days. What's the singer's name? He did Born in the USA and all that stuff.
Springsteen?
Yeah. Springsteen.
The
What
Boss.
A great song. Glory, the Boss, and it's a great song.
Glory
but it's
days.
Like, man, I don't, even when I was in high school, I'm like, this is fun, but it's not going to be the most fun I ever have. I mean,
right.
But there's so much more of life.
And that's what I told my kids as they went through high school. And even now with them going through college, I was like, I don't want this. I don't want you to look at this as being like, this is not your apex mountain. This isn't your peak. This isn't your, the culmination of everything. Like, this is just the floor. Like, what you're living now is the floor of what's to come. And I think so many of us, I mean, I know I felt this way for years I was a kid with the erector set. I mean, if you're watching on the video, I still have models on a shelf behind me, but not because like you did them a long time ago. I did them like a couple of years ago. So it's very easy for me to be the erector set kid stuck in my room while everybody's out playing in the summer, because it feels easier. It feels safer, because like when Smalls shows up, he doesn't know who Babe Ruth is. He doesn't know how to throw. He doesn't know how to catch. And he doesn't know how to engage his stepdad. And there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But all it does is take one guy.
Yeah.
And he saw him sitting there with a baseball glove. He's like, oh, well, we got these 8 guys. We could use a 9th. Why don't you show up? Oh, I don't know how to. We'll figure it out. I don't have a glove. I have an extra. And what you see in Benny is what all of us need. But it's what we, I guess, most long for and are most afraid of not getting, is somebody to invite us, somebody to defend us when you're like, he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, what? You think you're any great shakes? I mean, that's the funny thing. They're all kind of, misfits and outcasts there in their Sandlot. That's just a kind of a field that's not really a baseball diamond. But, and as you see it, they go through things together, and just like they do, we need to go through our initiation. Yeah. But we can't do it alone, because like you said, we think it's safer because we don't want to be exposed as not knowing what we're doing. Like you said, there's so much life outside of our room, but all he had to do was show up. Like he did. He wasn't even playing. Yeah. He was just hiding out in the outfield. And then he ran away because he got embarrassed, but just showing up put him on the map.
Man, that's so good. Not a full model, in my opinion, but Benny is kind of a Christ figure in the movie, because almost like a David with a whole bunch of rejects, like when David was exiled and he had his mighty men and they were a whole bunch of rejects and exiles, But Benny is a master baseball player. And they show us when Smalls can't catch, right?
Yeah.
He goes, just stick your glove up. Do you know how hard it is to hit a ball in the outfield and hit some dude's glove? But here's the thing. That's exactly what Jesus does with me. I don't know what I'm doing in the kingdom. I have no clue. I don't know what I'm doing. And he says, go out there. Just stick up your glove. I got it. I'll take care of the rest. All you got to do is show up. All you got to do is show up. I got it. But then he does teach us how to throw, and he does do all that sort of stuff. But I love Benny has his own arc, but Benny is, yes, he's he has invited all of these misfits in. They're all misfits. And so he's like, we got room for one more. We got room for more. And that's who Jesus is. And so I love that element of the movie, is that Benny is this, and he's a master, but he's an inviter, and he fights for these kids. It's great.
And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't play a clip that included the sort of the iconic tagline from the movie, "You're killing me, Smalls." Because as Smalls does get invited in, it was him catching the ball that immediately is like, oh, I guess this kid's all right. He's not so bad. And really, you just need to give him a chance to figure it out. And it's like that thing, the part where he's like, as you've been forgiven, forgive others.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because we're all, at one time or another, we're Smalls, just wanting to fit in, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be welcomed by the group. And then once we've been accepted, our tendency is to shut out any other future Smalls that comes in. When what we do, right, what we should be doing is like, oh yeah, I remember being that guy. I should be a little more welcoming. I should be defending him. I should be showing him how it's done. So I think Ham takes over this initiation process of Smalls. They go on a camp out because they've lost their ball. They can't buy another one. The beast is going to get it. And it's just, the whole thing is this exaggerated, oversized memories of youth. And it's so interesting the way that it's portrayed. But they go to the camp out, and Ham actually he offers Smalls s'mores, but because again Smalls is new, he doesn't know. He's like, I have no idea what you're saying. And it takes two: one to admit that you don't know what the other person's talking about, and the other is the patience and willingness to say, oh, well, you don't know what this is. Let me show you how it's done, and you're going to regret all the previous time where you didn't know what a s'more was.
Hey, you want a s'more? S'more what? No, you want a s'more. I haven't had anything yet, so how can I have some more of nothing?
Shut up!
You're killing me, Smalls.
All right, who cut one?
These are s'more stuff. Okay, pay attention. First, you take the graham. You stick the chocolate on the graham. Then, you roast the mallow.
No, it's my sleeping bag. That's mine.
When the mallow's flaming,
Yes, it is yours. It has a yellow stain on it.
you stick it on the chocolate.
I'm gonna set the place
Then-
on fire, Ham.
You cover it with the other end.
Here, make me one of those. Yeah, me too.
Then, you scarf.
I don't like that chocolate.
Kind of messy, but good. Try some.
Kind of messy, but good. But I wanted to play that whole thing. One is just to be like, when was not you, Britt, but the guys, the families, the people that are listening, when was the last time you had a s'mores? When's the last time you made s'mores? And you don't need a fire pit. Like I remember my dad had a charcoal grill, and every once in a while we'd roast marshmallows over the grill. But in the movie, it's super cool because Ham has like 2 candles. Because we think, I need a fire pit. I need this elaborate thing, or I need work with what you got. Because what you got is all you need. And just sort of embrace that, the newness of youth, the memory of making s'mores, and it's messy, but it's not very nutritious, but it's a lot of fun. And the whole purpose, I think, of this podcast today is to encourage our listeners to go be a kid again.
Yeah. What I love about that clip, one of the things I love about it is that Ham thinks this is an essential part of life. Right? I mean, that's his attitude. You're killing me, Smalls. Like, what do you mean you don't know what a s'more is? Someone had to teach Ham at one point in his life. Like, he didn't know he might have been 2. I don't know. He could, maybe he doesn't remember being taught, but at some point he didn't know, like to your point earlier. And he very meticulously explains how to do this. First, you take but it happened. It happened in relationship and in community. And I believe social media and the internet and all that we have are amazing tools, but you cannot substitute for actual community. There is something powerful about actually being together physically, and which is why Paul and I were talking about, and Paul invited me up to Lake Hartwell, and it's like, just come up for the day, man. Like we long for actual human connection. And
right.
Even Paul says it, the Apostle Paul in the scripture, he's writing to the Romans, writing one of the most genius treatises of the theology of the gospel. Like Romans 8 is genius level writing, okay? But at the end, he goes, I wish I was there in person. Now, we're still reading Romans today, so it's not like what he did wasn't impactful, just like the internet and all that we do. But there's something that we long for. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, in his letters and papers from prison, because he was in a concentration camp because he was part of a plot to assassinate Hitler. And we could talk about Bonhoeffer a lot, but
we haven't quoted Bonhoeffer in a while.
And his letters and papers from prison are very interesting. They're not great reading because there's just a collection of his letters that he wrote to his family. But at one point, it really hit me because he says, he's writing a letter to his sister, whoever it is, and he says, I don't miss sermons. I don't miss singing corporately. He goes, I can sing by myself, worship God. What I miss are the people. What I miss are the people. And I just remember that hit me when I was reading it. It's like, man, we spend so much time and energy, and not that we shouldn't strive for excellence, but we spend so much time and energy on the religious trappings of Christianity. And I'm telling you, man, the people that have made the biggest influence and impact in my life were the people who sat down and had a beer or coffee, took me to the diner late at night and had real conversations. I'm telling you, those people changed my life. And I love great sermons, and I'll listen to whoever. I'll listen to all of them. I love it. I love reading great books, and those do have an impact. People that changed my life are the people that were there for me and sat with me and loved me, and so that's what we long for. And that's what this movie kind of shows. It's like, hey, we had these people as kids. Maybe we didn't have the Sandlot and the little baseball kingdom that they had on the, but a lot of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, still had those. There were vacant lots around us, and we did some crazy crap in those vacant lots. I'm just telling you, we built ramps and did stuff that was, nobody knew what we did, but we experienced that with other people, and great.
What you had said, and it's even when we record, we always record on video. We're not always on Facebook Live. We haven't been for, a year and a half, but because I think it's important to see each other.
Yeah.
And what you did in your youth and what these guys did, they engaged the senses. Because you know what? Good. A roasting marshmallow smells delicious. And that's how you make those memories. You engage your senses, because the more senses that you can bring in, the more implanted that memory gets. I want to go back to that question that I brought up earlier, Britt. That idea of the freaking out. Because you know what?
Yeah.
There's some times that you're like, that is the best thing I ever had. Oh, you kind of spaz out and you're just like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. And so I'm going to sort of give the prelude, the call to action is going to be coming up front. Because for one is we want you guys to engage your senses, make some s'mores, get out there, show up. We say show up all the time up here. But I also want to say do something that you'll freak out about. And I don't mean like freak out, get scared like skydiving or anything insane like that. I mean like freak out. This was awesome. This was like a couple of years ago. I remember we went to this restaurant in Beaufort, South Carolina. And it was my wife and I. It was like after a sunset cruise, we just like, on a catamaran, we walk over and we had like a pre-dinner drink, and then we sit down and they have saganaki, which is this cheese that they light on fire and you eat it like all melty and crusty and warm and delicious. And then the food was amazing. And I get to the end of it. I told my wife, I was like, I never want to eat anywhere ever again because this is so good.
Has ruined me for all.
It is.
places.
Yeah. Everywhere else is like, yeah, it's not Beaufort Grocery down in Beaufort, North Carolina, not Beaufort, South Carolina. It's Beaufort. So our challenge is do something that makes you freak out like that. And so my question then to Britt is, when's a time that you've sort of done, you remember we were talking about the kids running around screaming, hooting, and hollering. When's a time that you felt that way that you're just like, oh my gosh?
There are different freak out moments. And I think that we lose the childlike heart, that when we lose the childlike heart, I don't care what it is, you're not going to have a freak out moment. Like the core
right.
is,
if you approach everything with skepticism and cynicism,
then even a freak out moment, you're going to be like, well, this isn't going to last or whatever. Like you don't get to enjoy those moments because God, man, I'm telling you, maybe other people don't have this experience, but God loves surprising me. Like if you don't have that, then even the awesome stuff that I'm going to talk about, it's not awesome because you're just going to miss it.
Well, and I think what you're talking about is like a baseline approach to life. Because you go into it looking for the awe and wonder.
Yeah.
Like you expect to be surprised.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm even more surprised than I expect. Like this story recently, a friend of mine was asking me if I was going to the Stryper concert. Stryper is a 80s heavy metal Christian band that I have memorized every lyric and note of everything they've ever done. And I have seen them several times.
And it's cool because it's going back to the 80s, which is your childhood.
That's my childhood.
And hitting some common themes here.
Well, and as a believer, they were very foundational for me as well, because I loved that style of music. And now I had something to listen to that was a positive influence for me in that realm, right? So even in my faith journey, they were a huge part of that. So all of that to say is, he's asked me if I was going to go. It was Wednesday and the concert was on Thursday. And I was like, oh no, dude, I'm sorry. I wanted to go, but I've seen them several times over the last few years and I don't really want to spend the money. And my daughter, Elisha, has a chorus concert on the same night. And so all of that together, I'm just going to kind of be out this year, and I said, why? He said, well, I was going to go. So try not to make this too long of a story, but he doesn't even like Stryper. And I said, how are you going? I didn't think you liked him. He goes, well, I like him, but I don't really like him. Just a friend of mine really likes him. And so he bought these 2 VIP tickets going back to see the band. And he had never seen them. He was a huge Stryper fan, never seen them ever, and just wanted me to go with him. And so I said I would. And he's like, I was hoping we could hang out, but you're not going. I said, well, hey man, tell the guys I said, hey,
tell the band what's up.
And that, Thursday night, I just texted him. I said, hey man, I'm a little jealous, but just rock a little bit more for me, and enjoy yourself. And he said, I will. And I've got something to give you next time I see you. I'm like, okay. So, and I thought it was going to be like stickers, which I would have been floored. I would have been like, yes, sticker.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Or a t-shirt or something. Yeah. Like I thought it was going to be something like maybe even a signed t-shirt or something. Like I was like, I didn't know what to expect. But so I was just like, well, I'll just see what it is. Well, his friend, his name is Patrick too, but his friend had kept a sealed vinyl from the 80s of Soldiers Under Command, one of their top albums, and gave it to Robert, which that at all by itself is amazing. And Robert said, dude, if you give this to me, I'm just going to give it to Britt. And the guy was like, give it to your pastor, man. Give it to Britt. That's great. And so they took the cellophane off and had the band sign it. So all 4 members of the band signed the cover. And that's one of the things he gave to me one morning when we, and it was like some patches and a poster that they had signed and stuff too. But I was freaking out. I was like, my daughter Hosanna was in the car because we were waiting on the bus, and that's kind of one of the places we can, Robert and I can see each other. And anyway, I was speechless. I was like, what the heck, man? This is amazing. Like, he was like, oh, I'm glad you like it. And I said, let me give you some money. He goes, this cost me nothing. It's yours. And it's just one of the moments. But there's those moments in life where, I tell you all the time, right? I text you. I'm like, some editor asked me if I wanted to review Doctor Strange, the new Doctor Strange movie, which I was going to see anyway. Right. And then they were going to pay me to review it. Would you like that job? I don't know. Just there's those little surprises along the way of life. And there are horrible things that happen. And we should grieve too. We should laugh, rejoice with those who rejoice. We should grieve too. Grieving is an important thing that we should learn how to do in the kingdom. And we don't do enough. Maybe we'll do an episode on that. That'll be the happy day. We'll do a grieving episode. But there's joy too. God is at once sorrowful and joyful at the same time. And when you're close to him, you have to realize I don't have to work up the joy. The joy is in me. I got the joy down in my heart. Where? Hey. Down in my heart. Where? But I don't have to work up joy. It's his. I just have to turn to him and say, you got joy? And he gives it to me. The same with sorrow. Something bad happens and I want to connect with the sorrow of another human being and the crisis that they're going through. I just have to go to the Lord and go, can you help me have the right sorrow for this? He does. And I weep with those who weep, right? Yeah. That's how you do it. And I don't have to work any of it up. I can't manufacture it. It's not about me anyway. And so all that to say is, for me, it starts with that childlike attitude of realizing every day is an adventure. I wonder what's going to happen today. And you find little things, and sometimes it's big things, and you just learn how to be thankful. Being thankful is a huge part of it. But then when those things happen, you do have those freak out moments. And for me, it happens in all sorts of different arenas. It's not just one thing. Sometimes it's an action figure. But I'm like, I didn't even know this existed.
Just the fact that it exists is awesome.
But I'm going to be. I still want to. That doesn't mean you're immature. You can be a big kid and not be immature. You can still be mature, but part of being mature is to walk in that joy. I think that's a different idea of maturity than the world has sometimes. But there you go. My freak out.
Well, I think it's such a good example because on the one hand, we have to be open to it. We have to be looking for it. But the other ways, we have to be willing to express it.
That's good.
Like too. With your friend gifted you this awesome thing. And like, I've seen it. I'm probably guilty of this. I don't always receive gifts well I can't, like this idea, like I can't accept it. That's too much.
I know it's too much. Yeah.
Or like when your friend gifted you the Striper vinyl, is you respond either with like, I can't accept this. This is your gift is too much, which is what a horrible response.
Right. You're right.
But the other is this feeling like, oh, now I need to make it up. I need to gift him something.
Right.
You think there's
exactly.
like this balance, this scales.
Transactional, right?
Right. When we approach life, either one of those two ways that I know I've been guilty of, somebody gives me a big gift and I either feel like I owe them, like, oh, well, I better give them a big gift the next time, or I feel like I don't deserve it. And so then I don't really receive it with the heart from which it's coming from. I think both of those squelch the joy and the childlike. And what would be better than to sort of respond to such a gift with like a little kid running around and being like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Let me just say this out loud. You don't deserve it, and neither do I. And that's how you freak out. I know I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes me so happy. Instead of fighting, you're right. The first man reaction is, I got to deserve this. I got to pay you for it. There's got to be transactional here. But God's like, you couldn't do this if you wanted to. Like, you couldn't deserve this if you wanted to. It's just love. And that is so amazing. And, you know, one of the things that kind of happens at the end of this movie is that the stepdad his arc is he has to learn how to play. He has to make the time. He keeps saying he will, but then he doesn't.
Well, it's obvious he loves baseball.
He loves baseball,
but he doesn't play.
And that's
baseball.
how the kid's trying to connect with him. And this happens a lot with men. I know it can happen with women too. Women are better, in my opinion, at having conversations that matter, and it doesn't have to be attached to an activity. They're just better at that. I can do that, but most guys need conversations that matter to be attached to an activity. Not all of them, but some. Most, I would say. Large portion. And so he had to come to this point where, as a stepdad, you see, maturity isn't that you don't play anymore. Maturity is knowing the importance of play and doing it on purpose. See, when you're a kid, you don't realize what you're learning when you play. You're just playing. That's immaturity. Maturity is saying, I know that play matters, and so I'm going to do it intentionally. That's maturity. Maturity is saying, I choose to play instead of like when we were kids, right? It was just like, playing around.
That's what we did.
It's just what you do. But maturity is being the dad and saying, I know how important it is for the kids to play, so let's play together. And I know, and I'm looking forward into the future. I'm in the moment looking forward in the future saying, I want to have this memory with you 20 years down the road, right? Being in the moment, thinking of the future. And like I said, it's like I prayed before, it's this amazing thing that the Bible does is it respects and honors what has happened in the past and what God has done. But the Bible doesn't stop there. It talks about how great he is today, despite, I just read Psalm 118 the other day. I wrote a little article on it. It's amazing. It's like Psalm 118 starts out with how great God is, and it goes, but I called out to God in my distress. Like, it's like he wasn't having a perfect life, but he still acknowledges how great God is now. And then in the same psalm, he acknowledges how great God is going to be in the future. There's this amazing ability we have within the kingdom and within our relationship with God to approach life being grateful for the past, acknowledging the importance of the moment based on what we know to be true in the future. That is the heart of God. And he gives us everything. He doesn't just give us the past, right? And if that's Dayenu, if that's all he did, it would have been enough. But that's not what he does. He doesn't just give us the president, the president. He doesn't just give us the present. And if that had been all he did, that would have been enough. But he doesn't just do that. He gives us the future too. That's how much he loves us. And so just as we kind of bringing this to a close, what the stepdad had to learn and what the kids had to learn is to kind of pass what they learned on. That's maturity. I think Benny doesn't go into it, but I think Benny was passing on what he had learned, right? Mm-hmm. Scotty had been given a chance when no one wanted to give him a chance. So he gave the dog a chance, right? Like they were passing on the things that they learned and doing that through experience and play and relationship. And I just encourage people that's maturity, knowing how important those experiences are. Now we get to choose to do it on purpose,
Yeah. So we want to encourage you guys as we sort of transition to summertime, get out of the house. You don't have to go very far, but just get out, engage in play, engage your senses, whether that's like your smell, your touch, do something just for the joy of doing it. Because that's that'll bring your heart to life. That'll remind you of the importance of it. Yeah. And because it's too easy to get sort of, it's interesting. Both Scott and Bill, the stepdad, were more comfortable inside working stuff out on their own.
Good.
But you got to get outside, have a catch, as to throw back to Field of Dreams, and just see what happens. Show up and see what happens. So, so this has been Paul McDonald and Britt Mooney talking about The Sandlot. And we hope you enjoyed it. We hope that you enjoyed the live stream on Facebook. We'll be doing more of those. If you want to be sure to get all of the live stream stuff and be part of the audience, check us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Men at the Movies. Support us and help us do what we're doing and be a part of the growth and the changes that are coming. They're going to be pretty awesome. We're excited. We're freaking out about it. Woo! So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope you join us next week here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?